Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Dumas, and I am the Vice President of Advancement and University Relations here at Johnson & Wales University. Thank you for joining us today for a session of a celebration of Women's History Month, JWU Alumnae in Leadership. We are thrilled to bring you this program featuring outstanding alumni who've risen through the ranks of their respective fields. We are grateful they have taken the time to be with us today and to share their experience, expertise, and to answer your questions. Questions can be submitted throughout the session utilizing the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be posed to our panelists during the Q&A section of the presentation. I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Dr. Marie Bernardo-Sousa, President of JWU's Providence Campus. Marie Bernardo-Sousa has spent her 30-year career in higher education at Johnson & Wales University. She came to the Providence campus as an undergraduate student, and her first position was in the registrar's office in 1988. What followed began her trajectory of positions of progressive responsibility at JWU that included Director of Academic Services, Vice President of Student Services and University Registrar, Senior Vice President of Student Services, and Senior Vice President of Administration and Enrollment Management. In March 2019, she was appointed Providence Campus President. With a keen commitment to the student experience, Bernardo Souza has a long history of fostering collaboration among departments and across JWU's multi-campus system to facilitate the creation and revision of policies and operational efficiencies and improvements. She is also responsible for managing staff through ongoing redesign and change initiatives to ensure our students receive optimum care and customer service. Bernardo Souza holds a doctorate in law and policy from Northeastern University, a Master of Science degree in human resources from Emmanuel College, and a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from Johnson & Wales University. Please join me in welcoming our president, Dr. Marie Bernardo-Sousa.
Thank you, Maureen. This is such an honor to be moderating today's panel. I'm in awe by the talent, diverse perspectives, and experiences of our panelists. It is so fitting that we have this opportunity today at a university that was founded by two women in 1914, years before women had the right to vote. These women, Gertrude Johnson and Mary Wales, are indicative of women who seized an opportunity and ignored the individuals who did not believe in the capacity of women to run a business, to educate the future of the country, and support veteran and diverse learners to create a university with a world-renowned reputation. Our founders share so many of the same attributes with these women: passionate, bright, courageous, competitive, entrepreneurs, and comfortable with being uncomfortable. A recipe for success. The talent in today's panel is extensive. And for me, it is humbling to moderate our discussion with such entrepreneurial and visionary women. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Gina Gallo, who has an honorary doctorate from JWU. Gina, you are deeply passionate about honoring the history of your family and the craft of winemaking. You are a third-generation winemaker from one of the most America's historic winemaking families. Through these wines, you fulfill your vision as a creative expression of the land. Gina, thank you for being on the panel. Would you kindly add any introduction and share with us the most impactful woman in your life?
Thank you, and I'm very proud to be here. The most impactful woman in my life, there's a lot of them. I've been blessed with a lot of wonderful women in my life. I'll start there, including my mother, if she's going to be watching this. I would say, though, it was interesting. Julia Child, I had the opportunity to have lunch with Julia Child, and this is about celebrating women and really celebrating women and what they've done. And when I think of Julia Child, in the 60s, she really forged the way. I mean, TV personality, how she was funny, she was elegant, she was, all American, but she learned the French cuisine, very talented. So with that, at the lunch, I think what was so impressive is when she walked in the room, her stature alone, 6'4", but then her voice extremely strong, but then the joy, the kindness, how she would be so inquisitive and embracing. I just found her a bundle of joy and love, but amazingly strong. So I'll never forget that day visiting with her. That would be Julia Childs.
Wonderful. Julia Childs for me is an incredible educator. She was able to take the art of French cuisine and bring it into so many people's homes and make it attainable for people. So amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Garcia, who is a graduate of our JWU's North Miami campus in 2000. You also earned a doctorate in 2014, which we were so thrilled to offer you. Chef, you brought Latin cuisine to the world, to a wider audience. Your global, fresh and highly flavorful take on Latin cuisine offers a modern fusion of classic techniques with Latin ingredients. Your life is filled with activity with your role as chef, entrepreneur, cookbook author, media personality, cookware designer, and restaurateur. It appears a celebration of the cooking and passion for food that you grew up with in your native Caracas, Venezuela. Lorena, can you introduce yourself and highlight the most influential woman in your life?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me in this panel. I'm so excited to be in the company of all of you ladies. It's such an honor. Someone said, and again, there is so many women in my life. Of course, my mother, who, eccentrically, I am who she is. But a woman that walked one day in my classroom at Johnson & Wales University many years ago, and I think that it was one of her last visits to any cooking school. She said, cooking with abandon and passion. And that is something that struck me. The other thing that I saw is that she made gourmet cuisine accessible to everyone. And that is something that I always strive to do with Latin cuisine, being a Latin America in this country. Wow. And of course, she was the first one in experimenting with TV, which is something that I do as much as cooking. And she was a female chef that changed the way that we look at women in the kitchen, and that's Julia Childs. And when I saw that, that you guys were talking about her, it's like, it struck me because she impacted me so much that I think that in my early years, that was the biggest and most incredible person that motivated me to see that's the north that I want to follow.
Wonderful. As I said earlier, Julia Childs just brings so much passion and joy into her work. It never seemed like it was work with her. And I know that you do the same in your role today. Thank you. Jamie Kagan, class of 1988, and Vice President of Risk Management at Thomson Reuters. You are an active alumna with a busy personal and civic life with your work on several boards. You have over 25 years of experience in the insurance industry due to your data-driven, result-oriented focus, analyzing risks, procurement, placement, and services for global insurance programs. Can you share some details about your experience and who you identify as the most influential woman in your life?
I guess I would have to say my mom. She worked my entire life. She had a very successful career, but she had an excellent work-life balance. She was always there for us. We never felt like we were missing anything because she was working, and that was really important. And I always knew that I wanted to be a working mom. I never considered staying home with my kids as much as I adore them. I really like working.
Jamie, it's wonderful that you mentioned your mom, and I think every panelist has said their mom, right? They are such a critical facet of our lives and who we become as women, and really kind of set the stage for how we look at motherhood and our professional lives. So wonderful that you selected your mom. Thank you. Lisa Ranglin, you earned your Master's of Science degree from JWU in 2020. You are a mission-driven and highly respected thought leader who is a champion for women and marginalized communities. You are an inspiration to all those who strive to become change agents. Working with 3 Fortune 500 companies, you bring over 20 years of experience managing all aspects of large, complex, multi year multi-million-dollar initiatives with an emphasis on technology and regulatory compliance, process improvement, and organizational change management. Lisa, do you mind saying hello and sharing a little bit about a woman who has impacted you the most in your life?
Oh, yeah. So let me just say thank you so much for the opportunity to be with so many incredible women. I think this is really awesome. I would have to say there's two women that stand, really, I would say, but my mom, of course, who did not know how to, graduated from this, well, actually dropped out of school in the 6th grade to become a domestic helper to care for her or help with her, or I guess help her family. Her dad was ill and she had to step up and really forced out of school. And for me, I chose my mom as the woman that I would say defined who I am today in terms of never giving up, regardless of where you started. The other woman that I would call out is Rosa Parks. So when I think of Rosa Parks, I actually was fortunate to receive an award from the NAACP recently in her honor. And when I thought of that, and I thought of the women in what she has done, and for me, in my 20 years in corporate, it's always around focus on, driving changes, but women mobility. How do we ensure that we're not just waiting for somebody to tap us on the shoulder? We're standing up. And as Rosa Parks said, I mean, she really wasn't tired. She was sick and tired of what was happening. And she said, I'm not giving up my seat. So I really believe, each of us brings something unique to the table. And I think each of us have what it takes to make this world a better place. So I would say my mom and Rosa Parks are the two women that have actually demonstrated what it means to be, whatever you have, whatever the hand that you've dealt with, kind of run with it and just drive changes across the state and across the globe. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Lisa. I think it's wonderful that you selected two women who seem to have been on similar tracks, maybe in different parts of the world, but had felt the oppression. And so that's amazing. And they fought and created a better life for themselves and the people around them. So that's amazing. So clearly our panel is just fantastic. These women have tremendous experiences. And I'd like to start with Jamie. We've all highlighted someone who has had a powerful influence in our lives and the importance of having a positive role model. And Jamie, I know that you've had a strong relationship with mentorship. And can you share a little bit of how that's affected your own career growth and what it's like to be on the other side and being a mentor to other young women?
Yeah, I think it's really important to both be a mentee when you're starting in your career as well as being a mentor when you're later in your career. In my first job, I was assigned a mentor, and she was a director of the company. And I noticed early on that she had 2 young kids at the time. And I noticed early on that she worked school hours. So she worked, 7:30 to 3:30. I'm sure she worked a lot of other hours, but that's when she was in the office. And that was a time when there was no flex time, there was no part-time. And so, I asked her, how did you pull that off? And she said, it's really important to know what you want and ask for it. It's even more important to know what you need and ask for it. And if you make a good case, 9 times out of 10, you'll get what you're looking for. And that was, the first piece of advice that she gave me that you can really apply to everything, and to anything in your career. And she really did guide me through my career. And 25 years later, I'm still in touch with her. And now as a mentor, I really enjoy as mentoring graduates that are coming into the company new to business. I really enjoy hearing their perspective and the way they see things. And I hope that I'm giving them some good advice that I got when I started.
I think it's so important what you highlighted about being a mentee as well as a mentor. Right, that relationship, it allows you to grow so much throughout the process. Lisa, would you care to share your experience about finding a mentor and what that feels like when you're reaching out to a high-level executive?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Let me just piggyback from what Jamie just said. I think it's a two-way street when we think of mentors and mentee relationship. We have to look at it from, again, a two-way street. We're learning, right? And we're growing together. For me, I have this amazing, unique experience. So I came out of college with a tech degree, and I got to a bank, Fleet Bank at the time. Again, probably was too young to really know that I'm not supposed to interact with senior leaders. But of course, I knew once I got there that I wanted to really grow within the company. I was super excited to join the bank. And I didn't want to just be stuck in technology. And of course, very few women at the time were in tech. And this one woman that was leading the technology organization, and I was sort of, oh my God, just in awe about, she was very tiny and powerful, because when everybody talked about her, it was like, oh my God, this lady was incredible, right? So of course, I'm like, how am I going to meet this person? Of course, when you're in corporate, there's this, kind of chain of command where you can only talk to certain people. You got to talk to people that's in your ranks or level, that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, that is not going to work. Because again, when I came out of college, my goal was to become a technology exec for a Fortune 500 company eventually. So of course, luck would have it. I was in the cafeteria and this wonderful lady is in back of me. And of course, I'm like, oh my God, she's here. And I happened to just turn around, and we sort of caught our eyes together, and she asked what project I was working on, and chitty chatty until we kind of got through paying for a lunch. And then as we were walking back up to the second floor, I asked her, I said, I would love if I could be a fly on the wall in one of her meetings, and if she would, be my mentor. And of course, she said, absolutely. No one has ever asked before. So when I got back and shared it with my manager, oh my God, he was quite upset. Like, why did you talk to her? You're not supposed to talk. And I'm like, well, she had no problem with me, engaging with her. She was so happy. She gave me, when her meetings were, that I could attend her meeting. And he was like, that is not how it works. And I'm like, well, it works like that for her. And here we are. She said I can get on her calendar. So I shot a note over to her admin. And of course, we started this relationship, and she has been just a tremendous help for me. I got into project management. I got my certification. She paid for it. And then the history, we still are in touch, even though I left Bank of America, or Fleet Bank of America, we still stayed in touch, and she's just an amazing part of my life. And again, if I had followed my manager and not talked to this exec, where would I be today? So again, be bold and just do it. Mentors or mentee relationship are awesome, and we should just do it.
We all have to find our voice and our courage. So good advice. Thank you. Lorena, would you like to speak to your mentors, particularly in such a male-dominated industry? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that I remember my very first chef, very strong French chef, that he would used to throw the cast iron pans, and you will have to dunk it right in the kitchen when you will make a mistake. But that was the very first chef that allowed me to have his chef knife at the end of our journey together. And he was the one that taught me the meaning of a chef giving their knife to another one, is kind of passing the baton, and impacted me so much, and really having respect for the jacket, right? Something that I learned at Johnson & Wales University is the respect for the uniform, the respect for, if something changes when you're at home, and it happens to me that I'm here in the kitchen, and when I wear my chef jacket, something happens internally that the whole persona changed. And that is something that definitely was passed to me through the chef that I worked with and studied with at Johnson & Wales. That's why I'm so passionate and so in touch with my school. But at the same time, with my very first chef that, I started with, taking 5 hours to cut a box of shrimp or portobellos. And then at the end, I will do this prep for 3,000 people in less than 12 hours. So those mentorship throughout the beginning of my career is kind of what it gave me kind of the light of who did I want it to be? What is it that I wanted to learn? And what was my voice? It's trying to understand who I was as an artist. And that is something that is so important about a mentor.
That's wonderful. You found your authentic self. And I think you talked about just the importance of someone saying you can do it, that passing over the baton or the knife in this situation was really a vote of confidence.
Yes.
That's incredible. It always gives a person the foot forward. So that's wonderful. Gina, do you have a story you can share with us?
Yes, I've definitely been blessed in my life. I've found that many others have also been blessed similarly to find those mentors that help us guide us and show us the way. I don't think I would be where I am today at all if it wasn't for the strong mentors that were in my life. I'd have to begin with my grandfather, Julio. He was my first greatest mentor, a male, but amazing, very disciplined. He loved the dirt, he loved nature. He was a great influence on me. The time we spent together and the things I learned from him, I have found very invaluable as well. I cherish that time. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he really taught me the discipline and he taught me to nurture the land. And we're only, he had a great saying, our richest goods is the dirt beneath our feet. And with that, how we tend it and how we care for it is very important on a sustainable approach. So watching my grandfather work and guide his wines was very inspiring for me. When I told him that I wanted to become a winemaker, I feel like he already recognized that in myself. So he encouraged me to prove myself in the cellar, challenged me to work hard as I could. I also went to school because I learned I wanted to be a winemaker after my college degree in psychology. So I went back to UC Davis and took the extension courses and learned, and that's when I fell in love with it. I had two great mentors there. I would say Dr. Linda Besson, who was the science of wine, and then also Dr. Ann Noble, which was the sensory of wine. And I found them fascinating on how they taught, especially Dr. Ann Noble with the sensory, because I grew up in a family where we had wine at the table, food at the table, but the most important things were the people around the table joining. And then the food was really second. And then the wine was part of the meal. It was just an attribute that added to the conversation and the meal and the dinner time. So when I took her class, I didn't realize we weren't at the table swirling and sniffing and dissecting the wine like I do today as a winemaker. We were enjoying the wine, but now here it's a grape and you could have boysenberry, blackberry, currant, all these wonderful things. And here I grew up in a wine family. Hello, I should have known this. Two wonderful, powerful professors at UC Davis that I always ring their bell too, and I stay very close in contact with them.
That's
and
wonderful.
then lastly, in the cellar, Marcello Monticelli. He's been with our family for 30 years. He's truly the wine master of all. He taught me many, many things alongside my grandfather, Julio. Marcello, he really, he taught by example. As far as my review and my PAs, I rarely did them because he never had me do them. He wasn't really structured in that regards, but he knew I was doing my work because it was by example. He was there working hard. I was there working hard with him. Things had to be very neat. When you're talking about wine, it's super creative. You want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but cleanliness is extremely important. So attention to detail really takes you from a luxury wine to the top wines in the world. So I dearly, he just retired this year. I dearly appreciated him. But he was a wonderful mentor as well on the male side.
Gina, I love your story because each of those mentors are connected in some way, shape, or form, right? When you talked about your grandfather and that love for the land that you still carry on and its impact on wine, and then understanding the wine and how it comes to be with the creativity of bringing in different flavors in the process. So it's just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Now, as you can all imagine, each of our panelists has had a remarkable career, and we're hoping you can share with the audience some of the highlights of your career, the progression, and the challenges that you faced while arriving at this current position. So Lorena, can we begin with you? You're doing a lot of things, we know, but how did that come to be? What was your progression like?
Absolutely. Well, before I start that question, I have a very important question for Gina that I won't be able to move forward. At what age did you have your first glass of wine?
Oh, being a girl, we got to have a little bit of wine, but you got more if you put a little water in the red wine, so it turned pink. But my first glass of wine, I remember I was quite young. I was just before my 6th birthday.
Okay, okay, that was a good one. That's what I wanted to go. I imagine that was kind of the vicinity of it. So thank you, Gina. I appreciate it.
I learned
so going back
after that.
Yeah, right. So going back to your question, President, one of the biggest challenges that I encounter as I move forward in my career was definitely putting ego aside and understanding that life is not fair and you don't always meet your expectations. So what I think that understanding that, the fastest that I understood that, the better it was for me to be able to say, okay, if life is not fair and this is not the expectations that I'm, having, let me not let that paralyze me, right? Not let those situations say, oh, because this is unfair, or, because the person that is doing the same work that I'm doing is making more money, then I'm not going to do it. No. So let's accept that fact and continue to move forward, make those decisions, continue to work. So then you can get into a different position, or at least in a place that you can have a voice and do something about it. And I think that was one of the most important lessons that I had growing up in my career in terms of challenge. And then understanding or using the tools around me. When we think and talk about, for example, my first restaurant, a high-end restaurant, Chica, in Las Vegas. I am the first Latina chef in Las Vegas, imagine, in the strip in Las Vegas, in which we have over 44,000 restaurants, and it's only a handful of women that own restaurants in the strips. Then in property, I'm at the Venetian Resort. It's about 40 restaurants, and I'm the only female that owns a restaurant at the Venetian. So when you start seeing these statistics and this number, it's when you really realize that female chefs and leaders in the kitchen are not what you probably expect. And to surprise is turning around and saying, wow, this is really the number, from 5 women to 4,000 restaurants in a strip of 2-3 miles. It called my attention. So that's something that I then pay close attention to, building a strategy with social media and where all the mainstream channels, because once you focus into that, you're able to protect your brand. And when we think about COVID and everything that we went through through this last year, I think that social media is a tool that because you have instant gratification, because you're able to create your content and see what you're known for, I think that using that tool in today's age is extremely important, in able for you to have a direct control into your career and the things that you're doing, and not really necessarily depending on what the other one is going to say or what allows you to say or not. So I think that utilizing these tools will help us move forward in all this, which I'm sure not only me, if I got it 20 years ago and moving forward in my career, this is exactly what I'm trying to do right now, and trying to empower new generations of students that are females to understanding that there is a way and a path for us to own restaurants of high cuisine, to be able to be leaders as an executive chef and executive in any aspect of the hospitality. So I think that it will be one of the things that I will highlight moving in this career.
Lorena, sharing your story and really kind of keeping an eye on the fact that this is a learning process throughout, right? You continue to learn, you never stop learning, and that you're focused on what's happening around you. And I think what I took away from your story is how important it is to lift up others and provide them with the courage and the confidence to take those bold steps of starting a restaurant and being in the strip where there are only 5 restaurants owned by women and there are 4,000 restaurants there. That is unbelievable in this day and age. So to have the confidence to take those steps and move your career forward is just something we all need to take away from our conversation today. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. President. And, and I think that one of the keys is to be prepared. You never know who's watching you. You never know who's going to ask you a question that maybe is not related to what you're doing. But if you're prepared and you know what you're talking about, that's what I say. You have to do a master in what you do. And one of the things that I give to all the kids that I mentor, you have to go to school. Johnson & Wales University has been a wonderful home for me, because that's the departure. You can work for the best, but you have to go to school to understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Right. Thank you for that. Gina, can you share what your career progression was like and the challenges you faced along the way?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, growing up in a wine family, as soon as we could, we had jobs at the winery, different jobs, kind of crazy jobs. I worked in the mailroom. I was my dad's secretary, they called him in those days, admin in the office, creative department, all sorts of jobs, pruning the vineyards around our family farm. So I knew I loved the winery and the business, but I did not know quite where I fit in. I did not know what I wanted. I didn't know at that time that I wanted to make wine. That was something I definitely had to discover. After college, I started my career working in sales, because in sales, it's a great area, especially in the wine world, to not only learn your family wines of how they're perceived, but also the wines of the wines of the world. Also the restaurateur, what they're looking for, the restaurateurs, the customers, all of that. So I love that side of it in the building of the business. That being said, I really found myself really connected back to, I would say, the bountiness of the land. I felt like it really brought the families together around the table for delicious meals. That was a story I found actually when I was in sales, telling a lot is about the people. And with that, it helped me understand that I really wanted to be more connected to the land and its bounty, to bring people together. And one of the most important lessons I've learned from my mentors is that no matter how much knowledge, planning, I would say good discipline you have, you're going to be challenged. And sometimes despite that, at your best effort, you'll fail. And I feel that was one of my tremendous gifts, is that it was the challenge to decide. And for me, deciding to go into winemaking, my time in sales was important and educational, but it wasn't my passion or my heart. It took courage sometimes to change, but it's never too late to change, of course. When you're on the right path, you finally find that doors start to open. They really open. And it might be uncomfortable, but we need to embrace our dreams, I really feel, and find our passion. When you're challenged, you have the choice to be defeated or to be inspired. We always need to remember to choose inspiration. When you fail, you have the choice to be afraid or the curiosity. Choose curiosity. A technique that might have failed in one of my projects is key and a greatness in another winemaking project that I'm doing. Sometimes a question or advice inspired a shift in approach that led to success. And sometimes a failure in one project continued to fail in another project. And that was kind of a lesson learning when it's time to let go and move on. One of my biggest challenges I had in my career was learning balance, I would have to say, because at the beginning when I was making wine, I was single, I was footloose and fancy free. So I only had to be responsible for myself, my health, my well-being, and the individuals that I was working for. But then meeting my husband, Jean-Charles Boisset, and then we've been blessed with twins. This is where balance really began. I had to find my balance in life. And I think for me in a career, running, working hard, making wine during the harvest, but it's really all year planning. And then going out and talking to the restaurateurs and selling the wine, you know, you have two different faces, two different hats that you're wearing. So then the family life, it really threw a wrench in me. And that it was a great learning curve though. And that was a lesson in when to let go and when to rely, I felt like, on our team, and to really delegate and feel confident with them. And one person can't do it all. If we try, we're all going to burn out. And we all should seek out our environments that support and give time for renewal and balance. I feel the healthy mind, my grandfather always believed in this, the healthy body, the healthy soul, it's important. And when your life is healthy and balanced, you are more attentive to all your colleagues, your surroundings, and to the joy of life. So that finding the balance on my journey was a very big one for me, and a challenging one, but I feel like I'm not quite there yet, but almost there.
But working towards it, right? So that's the key, is that we're always working towards not perfection, but finding that balance and acceptance. Thank you for sharing that. That was quite inspiring. So navigating the business world can be really tricky. And many of you have navigated male-dominated industries. As a woman, did you find yourself taking a different approach? I know, Lisa, you were in some really male-dominated industries. Can you share your perspective on that and your experience?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think, you know, technology and in the banking world, you're right, very male dominant. And I think what I would encourage women to do is to think about what you're good at. So for me, the way that I've scaled, you know, from technology into regulatory compliance in different space on the business side was really understanding my skills and capabilities and what I was really good at. But really be open to align yourself with such as taking on additional responsibility. And never be afraid to raise your hand and says, yes, I want to explore this. And it could be out of your comfort zone, right? So what I would encourage when I think of barriers or challenges, I flip those into really positive. How do I transition to maybe challenges around not that many women of color or not that many women in technology? I look at it where, okay, I am the powerful woman in the room. So yes, there's a whole bunch of guys in this space, right? So what I did, instead of looking at it like, oh my God, it's just me, I'm the only one, or a woman of color, I said, absolutely not. I look at it more from the point of view, again, what it is that I bring really, really good. So I'm great at coordination. I'm great at tracking stuff. Let's get it done. So I kind of positioned myself to become an asset to the team rather than to look at the challenges that oh my God, it's only me. Oh my God, they're making more money than I am. All of that kind of stuff. I said, nope. Here's why you need to have a female on the team and more females, because one, we lead with empathy. We are better risk managers. And of course, we are better in tracking and get stuff done. So again, we're great with multitasking, right? Women, right? We're really good at that. So what I brought to the table was not necessarily focus on the challenges. So I would encourage us as we think about if you're in a corporate space like I did for 20 years, you know, people say, how did you leave technology and got in the business and you scaled up into leadership? I was always willing to raise my hand. Yes, that may not be my job, but yes, I'll do it. So for example, when COVID hit last year, I raised my hand to help with the return to work. Oh, Lisa, why are you doing that? Well, because all of the CEOs and the top leaders are part of that conversation. So there I was, I placed myself in the middle of it, right? Remember I said earlier, I was the most powerful woman in that room. Well, I may not be from a title perspective, but because I was managing the coordination or helping with the coordination, and we're talking about COVID, right? Bringing people back into the office safely, reopening the economy, all of that. So I would say, be open, be brave, and don't be afraid to raise your hand and always look at it. How can I really leverage that and seize it for my benefit, right? But also be willing to say, here's what I add to the table. Here's what I add to the scope of work. Here's how my work aligns to the strategic goal of the organization. But always be ready, ready and willing to be open-minded and learn and share and says, you give me lemon, I'm going to figure out how to make lemonade with it, right? And I think that's how we should do as we think about scalability and growth. I should add, after 20 years in corporate, I decided February 22nd was my last day. Officially left the bank because I found my wings, I found my voice, and I am absolutely liberated. So the company that I founded in 2012, I am now on the journey of scaling a consulting firm. And it feels incredible, awesome.
Congratulations, Lisa. That's an
Thank you.
amazing step. And it sounds like it's a step in the right direction for you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Several of you have talked about COVID in the aspects of all of our lives. It's had such an impact. And you've been able to manage the year handling COVID, balancing work and family. What are you doing in particular, to make sure that you're maintaining your physical and mental well-being? And how are you keeping pace with work? Because it seems like there's just more work during COVID time. Chef Garcia, can you speak a little bit to that experience for you? Because you've got so many different projects that you're managing along the way and a family as well.
Oh, Ms. President, it's definitely a challenge. And the craziness stopped when I decided to compartmentalize everything. It has to be in a compartment. I decided to merge everything together. Like, for example, think of my 5-year-old son is addicted to cooking in the kitchen. So, he comes in, it's completely open for him. So if I'm cooking and he wants to join me in, even if it isn't a television show, everybody knows that they loved it. And he just walked in. So being able to merge those, in which if I have to go for 2 weeks to a trip and work, I bring my family, I'm able to spend my time off with them. So being able to do that definitely helped. Again, I think that the being able to understand social media, not as being afraid because I don't have Instagram or I don't do Facebook or YouTube, the other way around, use it as a tool to be able to create that common thread of your voice, who you are as an artist, as a culinarian, in my case, as a culinary chef, is exactly that, how to build a strategy that you're able to position in a way that you can create your content, people will know you, and it becomes almost in today's age, like your card of presentation, more than your bio and your resume, right? It's
Right.
People, when they want to hire you for an endorsement, or they want to see you for a television show, or they want to see you to do an event, they will go to your social media channels and see if they like what you do or not. So I think that is what is so important, understanding it, kind of, bringing a strategy that will make sense for you, that you can, if you want to, showcase your craft, but also where you're coming from. And again, if you have your kids, bringing them to the kitchen. So kind of integrating everything at the same time. I want to tell you a very funny story that happened to me. And that kind of reiterated what I did. I got the opportunity, such a wonderful opportunity in my life, to cook for Miss Jennifer Lopez, a very extremely busy woman, right? She wanted me to cook for the family in her state in LA. I go in with my entire team. We're 15 people. And she is with her son playing internet games. She's with her daughter playing music. She turns around and starts singing her next video. She turns around and she's making decisions. And she's with her boyfriend and, doing things. So I understood, wow, if at this level, right, of entertainment, you have somebody that actually everything works around the same core of life. That's what I think it needs to be done somehow or a way. If you're in the restaurant, take an hour off, have lunch with your family, and go back to the kitchen. Meaning, find those moments during the day that you can integrate it to. And I think that for me has definitely worked wonders.
Great advice. Trying to stay connected throughout it all and integrating all aspects of your life to have
exactly. When you're able to be playing Roblox with your son and turn around and sing like you're singing in the Super Bowl, that's when you say, okay,
yeah,
you have to merge the two.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jamie, I know your experience has been very similar, a lot of moving parts in your life. Can you share a little bit about how COVID has impacted that, how you found the right balance? Jamie, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, my internet went out for a second there.
No worries.
Which is part of the challenge here. March 10th last year, I left my office with my cell phone and my laptop, and I never went back again. The same day my kids' schools closed, and there were 4 of us in the house, going to school, 2 people working remotely. As you can see, crappy internet connection some of the time when everybody's home. And it's been really tough to balance and hard to kind of separate things. Sometimes I find myself on my laptop working at 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes I'm in the grocery store at 10 o'clock in the morning and everything's just kind of backwards. But along the way, you do figure it out. And you're right. It's, self-care is very important. I try to exercise every day. I at least walk my dogs every day. And try to find some balance. And it's okay to tell yourself sometimes that it's okay to do things just well enough sometimes,
Right.
On either end, and you'll do better the next day, and it's fine.
Great. Thank you for that, Jamie. I think now what we'd like to do is to transition to the audience and take some questions from the audience. So one of the questions that we have is how it feels to when you have time to pivot and change the course you were on. So I know, Lisa, you just talked a little bit about that change in your life and making that pivot. How did you get there? What was your experience like?
Yeah, great question. So it's been a while in the making. So of course, you know, when you're in, you know, in my case in corporate and you have a great salary and you're doing well and you have your bills and families, it's really hard, right? To jump up and say you're going to leave and you go on this journey of entrepreneurship, right? So it has been in years in the making. As I noted earlier, I had started this consulting firm back in 2012, but of course was really worried about my daughter in college and education and mortgage and all of those stuff. So I put it on hold for a very long time. And I think for me, it's once, you know, I think it's at 50, I got into the 50 club. Once you hit 50, you kind of think like, okay, I need to kind of reset here. And I need to do something when I think about work-life balance, and I need to be able to call the shot. So, you know, I was doing a lot of work in the community, but I was also in a senior role at the bank. And because of my role in the community, I'm the founder of the Rhode Island Black Business Association, an organization that will be celebrating 10 years coming up on March 30th of this year. I've been called on all the time, whether to talk to mayors or governors or on news or what have you. And I've always been asked, I got to get permission at the bank. You know, you can't go here unless you get permission. And I kind of felt like I was kind of being strangled a little bit because I mean, I can't talk, I can't go here, I can't go there, right? So I decided, you know, 50 showed up and I said, well, I think it's time. I've spent 20 years in one industry and it was time for me to go. But it's really around coming to the realization around that I can do more. And I wanted to spend time with my family. And my daughter had done, when she was in her master's program at Rhode Island, URI, she actually did an essay and she interviewed me. And when I spoke about my work at the bank, she said, Mommy, you're not so happy when you're talking about the bank, but when you talk about your community work or your business, you're all lit up. And that was the wake-up call. After I read her essay, I was like, oh my God, I am in the wrong place. I've overstayed my welcome after 20 years. And I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. So I left almost a $250,000 salary to walk out with no salary and to go out, in my case, to go out in faith, but know that I have incredible people around me that are supporting me. And again, if I can navigate the corporate space for 20 years as a Black woman and really scaled, I know in the middle of COVID, with what's happening with the social unrest, COVID and all of that, I know that I'll be successful because again, I was born and raised in poverty back in Jamaica, got here as a teenager in the state. And somebody told me when I got to college for computer science that girls that look like me don't go to college for computer science. 4 years later, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer programming technology. That tells me girl that looks like me do go to college and we hit the corporate space as well. And I feel empowered and liberated that I own my own career. And now I'm calling the shots as the boss lady. So I'm loving it.
Bravo.
Great, Lisa. Wonderful and very bold moves. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
Sure, thanks.
Gina, you touched upon, that move from sales to winemaking. What caused you to pivot and change the course at that time?
It was similar in some regards. When I was in sales, what I loved was the relationship building of the shop owner, whether it be the liquor shop or the restaurateur, and selling the wine and building that relationship and helping them build their business. But at the same time, I had some really small mom and pop shops where it was cash on delivery, COD. And that means you pick up the cash when you drop off the wine. And I just was like, oh, and I'm like, don't worry, next time. So I'm a strong individual, but with that, I was really just so sensitive. And I felt like because they maybe didn't have the ends to pay me that time, I wasn't doing the proper thing of getting the right wines in there. So my boss, I'll never forget, he tells me, Gina, first of all, you cannot do that. Second of all, it's illegal. It's illegal. And I said, okay, our family winery, I'm going to be selling the farm for free. And at that time when I was in sales, though, that's when I went to take my wine courses. And I sat through my first class. I mentioned Dr. Noble and Linda Bassan. I fell in love. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was flying. I was smiling. I felt it in my soul. I felt that I was being much more authentic to myself. And it was a big switch for me because, yes, I grew up in a winemaking family, definitely privileged in that regards. But at the same time, in our family, my grandfather Julio was the winemaker, and it was the boys in his wine tasting. He tasted every day at 11. It was all men. So it was very odd for me. And I'll never forget walking down the lane to go to talk to him because I told my father first. And he said, Gina, if this is what you want, go talk to your grandfather. He is the winemaker. And yes, he was my grandfather. And I have to say, I was scared. I was very nervous when I went and talked to him, and I explained, and he said, okay, I think I have a place for you. And then that's when I mentioned I was working with Marcello, but you know what I think he said, and I don't know if it's the truth or if Marcello was just giving me a hard time one day. He told me after a long time when it was really, they knew I was serious about wine. I wanted to make wine. I wasn't going anywhere. I was for this. And Marcello said, oh, Gina, you'll not believe this, but your grandfather said, you don't worry. You just mentor for a while. She's going to be here, but then she's going to go have babies. I was like, what? My grandfather could have said that. But that was the generation. That literally was the generation. The mamas did the cooking, the cleaning, take care of the kids. And nothing against him. You're very much an Italian immigrant, and that's just kind of how they thought. But on the flip side, then when I found that he knew I wasn't going anywhere, my Uncle Ernest, he saw my love for it, and he saw, family member, being a lady, seriously an authentic winemaker, I'm going to have her go out on the road and talk about wine. So, he embraced the beauty of being a lady, and really gave me another level of confidence because I think I was a born probably introvert for sure, and I'm a trained extrovert in some regards. So yeah, and that was another switch, but not a switch. And my focus is wine. You just have to follow that authentic voice in you and surround yourself with authentic individuals that give you that authenticity, which I think
Right. That really support your energy and really highlight your confidence, give you those opportunities. Great. Thank you so much. So what is the best advice with work-life integration as a woman in a leadership role? Not sure who would like to take that question, if there's someone who would like to speak to that. But what's your best advice with work-life integration? Jamie?
Have empathy for people. You don't know what they're going through. And I think particularly with COVID, that's become very important. I have a colleague who has two very small children. She's constantly bouncing off of meetings and getting distracted. And I could see other people getting annoyed with her situation. And you have empathy for people and what their situations are and try to be understanding.
I think that's great advice. Another question that's come up is, what advice would you give women who are starting a career right now in finding that voice and being able to speak up? So I know, Lisa, you spoke to that, and Chef Garcia, I don't know if either one of you want to contribute to that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really around understanding the space that you're in. So again, when you're getting into a workplace, going in for the first time, or just starting your career, I think you want to make sure that you're learning the environment, understand where you fit in the organization, and be mindful. Again, sometimes you have to wait before you start using your voice. The time has to be right? So after you've kind of been grounded and you know what you bring to the table, you know what the value that you add to the organization, then you look for that opportunity. It could be in an employee volunteer capacity, where you're actually using your voice to drive changes, maybe at a smaller level, right? It could be a part of an affinity group of some sort or within your team. But I think I would say be mindful of where you sit in the organization, understand your strengths and what you bring to the table, and determine when it's the right time. Don't just talk for the sake of talking. Don't just throw stuff out there loosey-goosey. Make sure that it's thoughtful. Make sure that you're having conversation and building relationships. I think if you're able to build really strong relationships and faster relationships within different departments, right? Not just in the silo that you're in, look for people to be partners in and out of your organization and really kind of learn, take best practices. I would encourage folks to say, talk to other people outside of your group. talk to people outside of your organization. For me, now that we have virtual hookups, right, you can meet with people from all kinds of different companies, right? For me, I love socializing, right, networking in person, but we don't have that anymore. So I still do pop-bys via Zoom. So I encourage you to do these pop-bys or hookups, whatever you want to call them, but just make great connection before you start just running, especially when you're new to an organization.
Thank
I
you,
would
Lisa.
like-
That's
I
wonderful.
would like to add for that, Ms. President. I believe that there are more space for women, right, in leadership positions, but for us, I believe that it has to be hand in hand with the preparation and education, and not for the fact of being a woman, right? I think that that's when everything departs. And no matter, one of the things that I notice when you have an individual or a woman that it has a huge idea, wants to wants to have the biggest restaurant or have the biggest plant, for me, it's make it to the most minimal expression, simplify it as much as you can, so you can really laser focus in how you can execute it to grow into the best version of that idea. And with those three words, simplify, focus, and execute, has worked so much as an advice that my mother gave me one day in order to be able to achieve, even if I am in my restaurants, or if I have a great idea, or if I have a new project that I want to do, how can I bring a small, so you step into it in an execution, because I think that the ideas sometimes get lost in actually how to execute it, how to have an idea and how to actually do it.
Right.
And that's how.
Right. Chef Garcia, I think that's really good advice, because as women, we're always tempted to try to do too much, right?
Yes.
We lose focus, and we really need to be laser focused on the important things. There's a question that is really directed at you, Chef Garcia. With such a low percentage of women in culinary arts or lead chefs, what do you think needs to change to make it easier for women to feel comfortable moving up in a predominantly male-dominated world?
I believe in opening the opportunities. That's something that I do a lot at Chica in Las Vegas and in Miami, when you see that 50% of my employees are female. So I actively am conscious of opening these opportunities. I think another thing that is extremely important is recognition. Sometimes when you ask and ask and ask and ask, and this is what is expected of you, but wow, sometimes great job. I love what you did today. That's the way that it's done. It does so much in terms of confidence, in terms of guidance, that sometimes when you're an entrepreneur like me, it's like sometimes you see that somebody tell you, wow, that's something good that you did right there, because sometimes you don't have that. And I understood and learned the value of acknowledgement. It does so much, the recognition. That is something that I always try to daily put in practice. I think that, those are the advices that I will give.
Thank you. Thank you for that. This has been just an incredible way to spend an hour and learning so much about your experiences. I feel so fortunate to have had this time with you. Each of you has paved the way for future generations of women and individuals who feel marginalized, showing us examples of resiliency, courage, community by paying it forward. Thank you for inspiring us to do more and to give back. I'd now like to invite Maureen Dumas back to close the program.
Thank you. What a great program. Thank you to our panel of talented alumni, and thank you to everyone in attendance today. There are two important women who we at Johnson & Wales celebrate all year, our founding mothers, Gertrude Johnson and Mary T. Wales. We proudly honor them with the Mary and Gertrude Society, which recognizes the university's most loyal supporters. In fact, we have several members of the society in attendance today. And I thank you for your unwavering commitment to Johnson & Wales and to our students. JWU is committed to providing you with robust and relevant programming while also supporting our students. In this spirit, we ask that you please consider making a donation of any amount if you've not done so already. During our annual Day of Giving on March 16th, our community will help continue the work of Ms. Johnson and Ms. Wales, which began more than 100 years ago. One JWU, 24 hours of giving, is all about participation and the collective impact we can make when we come together. I encourage you to visit the JWU website we've included in the link in the chat window and explore all the ways your gifts can make an impact on our students on this important day on March 16th. You can make an early bird donation today and help us get off to a great start. And if you've already made your gift, you can still get involved in becoming a JWU champion and help spread the word. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed today's session, a celebration of Women's History Month, JWU Alumni in Leadership, part of the JWU Connects family of programming, and we hope that you will join us again in the future. For the full listing of upcoming events, please visit our event calendar at alumni.jwu.edu. Thank you again to our panelists. We very much appreciate all the advice and wisdom that you shared with us today. I'd also like to thank our guests for your attendance, and I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.